Greetings all and welcome to Dave's Craft Room. I'm Dave, and on today's video, we're making a Frankenstein quilt. As you can see, I've had brain surgery recently. These are my external electrodes. They're just not sticky enough. I found this foundation paper piecing pattern on Fandom & Stitches. It's made by Brooke, Shewmaker, Husgen from Lover of Life Designs. It was a free pattern and it is stunning and gorgeous. FPP is perfect to use a product by today's sponsor, Munbyn. This is my Munbyn thermal printer. And we're going to use this to print the papers for the foundation paper piecing pattern. And the thing about the thermal printer is it's a good idea for FPP because the paper is thinner than regular paper and doesn't take any ink. So you don't have to use your computer printer ink, which mine is fully run out right now. This doesn't use any ink and it's also wireless. So let's show you exactly how I print it out. Okay, so I have my iPad here. Select the SharpFox app. Go to Document Print. Oh, let's connect to the printer. Okay, she's turned on. Oh, it's right there. Connect device. Okay, oh, I don't have any paper in it, but I have the paper here. This is the paper, and all you do is just shove it. Oh, shove it in the right side. Sorry, it started feeding it. Then I'm gonna select Document Print. I have the document here, Frankenstein FPP. To load a document in, it's easy. You just do import file, and then you can import the file from wherever you have it saved. I have it saved on the iPad. Open it. Now, I don't need these first couple of pages. I just need this. This is page 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So we're going to change that here. 5 to 9. Print it. And it just works. If you're interested in purchasing the Munbyn thermal printer, I have a link in the description box and a discount code. I do actually prefer this to using my computer printer. Thank you to Munbyn for sponsoring this video. So that was fast. That was faster than if I had to break out the computer printer. I can print right from I usually use my phone to print, but I use my phone to record the video, so that's why I have my iPad here. Work. Okay, so I'm gonna make 15, and I did make 5 already, and that's just because I wanted to make one test, but I was like, why make one when you could make 5 in 5 times the amount of time? This particular pattern, like any pattern that's like extremely stunning, it does take quite a while, just because there's so many pieces. This pattern is definitely of the quality that I would pay for, and it's available for free on fandomandstitches.com. I love that website for FPP patterns. Why did I want to do a Frankenstein quilt? Well, in the first place, this pattern is stunning, but also I love Frankenstein and Boris Karloff. When I was a teenager, I never did like Frankenstein because I was always more into vampires and Dracula and Bela Lugosi, and I thought you could only like one because I thought they were rivals. But of course, you can like them both. I still remember reading the book of Frankenstein when I was in college. It was around Halloween, and I always feel like reading stuff like that around Halloween. Like, I'm pretty sure I read Salem's Lot that year, too. Went to check it out for my university's library, and I remember, like, I went up to the 3rd floor, wherever they have the fiction books, and looked for the S's, and they had multiple copies, and the one I selected was, like, this very old, thick tome of a book, and it was just like very of the same vibe and energy of the subject matter, in the sense that it was just old and conjured the past. And it was one of those old library books, when you open up the cover, it has like the names of everybody that checked it out. And I remember I sat up in my tiny little apartment that I lived in college and read Frankenstein, and I absolutely loved it. I remember there were parts that were actually scary. I'm a huge fan of the book, and it's nothing like the movie. Not any of the movies. I can tell you back then, after reading the book, I watched the movie, and I remember being a little bit disappointed because I remember, like, you know, it was a thick book. Well, not that thick, but... And then they turned it into like an hour and 10-minute long movie with nothing from the book in it. But ever since then, I've kind of reevaluated it because I've come to love the universal monsters like Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein. And it's like, okay, we can't really evaluate this as an adaptation of Mary Shelley's book. We have to just look at it by itself, and that's better. If you want to get into Frankenstein, I will tell you this. the bride of Frankenstein is actually the true diva, because they literally invented her just to be a mate for Frankenstein, as if him having a friend would somehow calm him down. They build her, they wake her up, and she just immediately rejects Frankenstein's monster. Immediately. She has no interest whatsoever. And that just goes to show you, you give a person free will, you got to accept the consequences. You cannot control other people. You can't control who they like. A lot of people think that the Bride of Frankenstein actually rejected him because she was a lesbian. And then they say, look at the hair. I don't know whether she was a lesbian. Maybe she is. You have to look at the brain they stole, because they took somebody's brain. Actually, if I recall correctly, Igor killed a woman in order to get that brain. So if he killed a lesbian, then Bride of Frankenstein is a lesbian. By the way, everybody loved to point out that Frankenstein is actually not the name of the monster. Frankenstein is the name of the doctor that created him. But nobody wants to talk about the fact that then, if that's true, then the Bride of Frankenstein is actually not the Bride of Frankenstein. She's the Bride of Frankenstein's monster. And this is the Bride of Frankenstein because this is the person that actually marries Frankenstein. Even in the movie, that the gay doctor, he even says right away that when they wake her up, that this is the Bride of Frankenstein.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
And I'm like, are you saying that she's the Bride of Frankenstein in that she's a bride and he created her? Or are you saying that she's his bride as in his soon-to-be wife? Because she's not. She's the monster's bride. So that didn't make any sense to me. But I guess he's saying she's just a bride and he created her. But I think most people probably think of her as Frankenstein's wife, even though she never was. And by the way, she's only in that movie for about less than 5 minutes. The whole movie plays out and she comes in at the very, very end. I love the Universal Frankenstein series, and my favorite one is probably the third one, Son of Frankenstein. And I will admit, before I saw it, I thought they were going to invent a child monster, and that's who the Son of Frankenstein was. But no, Son of Frankenstein is obviously Dr. Frankenstein's son, who comes back to the homeland and finds Frankenstein's monster and wakes him up in order to prove that he's actually not a monster. Of course, he accidentally ends up proving the opposite, that he is a monster. Bela Lugosi's there. That's one of the 8 films where Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff appear together. In Son of Frankenstein, there's 2 reasons why I like Son of Frankenstein. No, 3. One is because of Bela Lugosi. The other one is because in that movie, they finally address the fact that everybody pretty much calls the monster Frankenstein, which means at this point, it's essentially canon.
9 out of 10 people call that misshapen creature of my father's experiments
Frankenstein. Frankenstein.
And then the third reason is because there's a very beautiful quilt in that movie. Frankenstein accidentally kills, I want to say like a rickshaw driver or like an old carriage driver, and breaks both his legs. And then when he's on the slab, he's under one of those like Victorian era crazy quilts. Surface level moral of the story of Frankenstein is that you shouldn't play God, because any attempt to play God is doomed to fail. But I prefer a different lesson, which is that you have to accept people for who they are. If people would have just accepted Frankenstein and been nice to him in the first place, like the blind guy was.
We are friends, you and I. Friends. Good. Good.
Then none of this would have happened. He wouldn't have chucked the girl into the water. He wouldn't go on a monstrous rampage and kill everybody, and everything would be fine. So you have to accept people just because they have like ugly looking head with like a weird flat top shape and external electrodes on the neck. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be friends with them. That's all I'm saying. Should I tell you what the quilt's gonna look like? I'm just chit-chatting about Frankenstein while I cut these out. This is always the most tedious part for me. The sewing is actually quite tedious too, but I'm okay with that because I'm sewing. Kind of like the quilt behind me, the Keytar quilt, which is a video that you can watch, by the way. I'm gonna make 15 blocks of Frankenstein's face, and in between that, I'm gonna put other things. And I've ordered some Frankenstein t-shirts on eBay, and I've ordered some fabric with Frankenstein on it. And the Bride of Frankenstein too, because obviously she's iconic. Oh, I think I have a video where I said that I'm doing three Halloween videos. I accidentally made 4. There were too many ideas. And so I just decided to make a 4th one. We still have a zombie quilt and a horror movie quilt yet to come. And by the way, when I said a horror movie quilt, honestly, I kind of realized that all of the projects ultimately have to do with horror movies because the zombie quilt is kind of a Night of the Living Dead quilt. This is the Frankenstein quilt. And then, of course, my haunted house video from last week. Oh my gosh, the haunted house video. I suspect there will be people who like it, and there will be people for whom it's not their cup of tea. That's true for every video, for everything. Oh my gosh, I was chit-chatting about Frankenstein, and I cut out all the pieces. Let's get some fabric together. We're gonna need some fabric, huh? All right, so let's show you the colors that I've selected. This is the test block that I made, one of 5 of these. And I think it turned out good, but I can do a little better. In this version, these are 2 different colors here, but they're just a little too close together. So I've selected these instead. And these are honestly, actually, in my opinion, still kind of close together, but there's only so much I can do because we have to have 6 different shades of gray. And they have to be different enough to be different. I figured out when I made this that the one I need the most of is black, and then number 3 gray, which is this dark gray. And I did select, for this go, I selected a little bit lighter of one. And you may notice that in this pile, they're all slightly different, and I'm fully okay with that. We're making a Frankenstein block, so we can Frankenstein it together. And even the blacks are different too. These are not even all black. And you can see that they're ever so slightly different, but that's totally fine. What color I need the actual most out of is actually the background, and that's why I've had to select 10 different background colors. So I'm gonna use the whole, all right, I don't know how much I'm gonna use of it, but I have a whole fat quarter allotted for a background, and that is gonna make the chain piecing complicated because the backgrounds have to go together. But I'm gonna try to stay organized and make it work and lay them out on the floor over there. And hopefully that'll work. So that in the final quilt, it'll be kind of like an Andy Warhol motif of the same block, but they'll still be slightly different because of the background. So honestly, let's just get started. I like to work from beginning to end and just get it done. And I will also add, this is not really gonna be a foundation paper piecing tutorial. I'm really just making the quilt, but I will put a link to tutorial below. If you wanna learn how to do FPP, once you learn how to do it, you can make pretty much any FPP pattern. Oh my gosh, we're doing 10 whole ones. Okay, work. Let's get into it. I do kind of regret one small choice, which is that gray that I selected for number 6 kind of has a little bit of brown in it. I couldn't tell when I looked at it by itself, but I can tell when it's beside number 4. This is number 4. But it'll be fine. It's just slightly off. I think it'll still be fine, and hopefully it'll be a vibe. Alright, so at this point I need to start keeping track of what's what because I'm sewing the backgrounds on, and the various different pieces of backgrounds need to match up. So there's no special method to it, I kind of just try to match the color to itself, and I happen to know that I was wrong a couple of times, but it turns out fine in the end, you can't really tell. Now the blocks are done, and since I set aside a whole fat quarter for each background, I'm able to take the extra background fabric and make a border around each one, and I think I decided on 14.5 inches unfinished blocks. Alright, I'm gonna cut up some of the t-shirts that I got on eBay now, and I'm not going to interface them because I don't have enough interfacing in the craft room right now, but that's okay, I can just deal without it. And this one glows in the dark, by the way. I have a picture of it glowing in the dark. Okay, here I go. I'm gonna make them 15 inches, I think. Yes, 15 inches. This is from the Hammer Horror series, which is different from the Universal series and also good. We're gonna cut this one a little bit longer, and I'll just cut the one underneath it a little shorter because I don't want to cut off any of the design. Oh, I think I do actually need to interface this one. I have a little bit of interface left. I can use it on some of them. Oh, this is the last seam. Right, so I've already basted it, and now I'm just drawing on my quilting design lines, which are these kind of random angular squiggles that I'm gonna do with free motion quilting. And then inside of these blocks, I'm just gonna do like a huge X. All right, and now I'm doing the free motion quilting. I don't do free motion quilting as much, so I'm trying to take it slow, make the stitches even, and that's it. Alright, this is the quilt top finally done, and I love the way it turned out because it's so Frankenstein-y. That's going to be all for today's video. Thank you for coming to Dave's Craft Room, and please come again. I found this pattern on Fandom in Stitches, and I thought it was so beautiful. Let me figure out who made it. Oh, my electrode! I know that you can glue stick things to your skin because I see drag queens do it all the time. It's hard being Frankenstein's monster. FPP was perfect because this video is sponsored by Munbyn, and we're gonna use this Munbyn thermal printer to print the pages. Well, this thing smells like rubber.